Title: I left med school, and my uncle cut me off, until his wife said, "Your son would be dead without her program." When I dropped out of med school, my uncle said I was a disgrace to the family legacy. At Christmas, he gave gift cards to everyone, except me. 2 years later, his voice cracked at a PTA meeting when the school counselor said, "Your son found the suicide prevention program from her nonprofit." Subscribe for more real stories that hit deep and stay with you. My name is Maya Trin. I'm 32, and I live in Seattle. I left my second year of med school after I hit rock bottom with depression and couldn't keep pretending I was okay. My family didn't understand. They just saw failure. Now I run Bridgelight, a digital mental health nonprofit that brings peer-led suicide prevention programs to public schools. It started as a spreadsheet. Now it's saving lives, quietly, relentlessly. The day I dropped out of med school, it wasn't dramatic. No big speech, no tears. I just closed my laptop during a neuroanatomy lecture, packed a bag, and left the dorm. I moved into a friend's attic. My family didn't call for weeks. When my uncle finally did, he barked, "You think life is supposed to feel good? You think I liked law school? You finish what you start." I didn't respond. He hung up. What they didn't know was that I'd been self-harming, that every day I imagined disappearing, that I only survived because a classmate pulled me aside and said, "You need help, and you're not alone." That small human moment lit something in me. I started journaling, researching. I found studies about peer support networks working better than top-down interventions in schools. And I thought, what if kids had this kind of lifeline before they broke like I did? I didn't want to be a doctor anymore. I wanted to be a bridge. So I built the first draft of Bridgelight, a pilot program, student-led, grounded in lived experience. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Starting Bridgelight was like whispering into a hurricane. I pitched the program to 3 local high schools. 2 never responded. The third wrote back, "We already have a guidance counselor." So I did what I could. I hosted weekend workshops in a church basement. I built a website on a free template. I recorded videos with friends sharing their own stories of depression, anxiety, eating disorders, raw and real. I wrote grants late into the night, praying for a $1,000 seed fund like it was a lottery ticket. Meanwhile, family gatherings were a slow-motion shame parade. At my cousin's wedding, my uncle clinked his glass and toasted, "The real achievers in the room," his eyes never leaving me. My parents smiled tightly, like they couldn't decide whether to defend me or pretend I wasn't there. But that night, a 16-year-old DM'd the Bridgelight Instagram. "I watched your video. I've been thinking of ending it. I didn't, thank you." I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. No one at the wedding saw what I was building. But somewhere, a life kept going. And that was more than enough. A year in, I got a surprise email from Roosevelt High's vice principal. He'd heard about Bridgelight from a student who ran one of our weekend peer sessions. "We've had 3 suicide attempts this year," he wrote. "Can you come in?" I was shaking when I walked through those school doors. Not from fear, from the weight of being taken seriously. I led a pilot training for 12 student volunteers. We talked about active listening, how to spot warning signs, how to say, "You matter," in a way that landed. 2 weeks later, a senior flagged a younger kid who'd been isolating. She followed the protocol. The school counselor intervened. He got help. He stayed alive. Roosevelt renewed the program for the full semester. Then 2 more schools signed on. I still lived in the attic, still ate lentils and rice 5 nights a week. But Bridgelight was growing, and it was real. That Christmas, I showed up to the family party in jeans and a thrifted sweater. My uncle glanced at me, then back at his wine. He didn't ask how I was. Didn't know his world was about to shrink into mine. A month later, I got a speaking invite from a citywide education conference. Nothing flashy, just a panel about youth mental health innovations. I almost said no, but something in me whispered, "They need to see you." I walked into the event with my laptop, a nervous smile, and zero expectations. I presented Bridgelight to a room of school psychologists, teachers, and policymakers. I spoke about lived experience, peer intervention, and the one text that kept a girl alive. Halfway through, I spotted a familiar face in the back. My aunt, my uncle's wife. She worked in district curriculum support. I hadn't even realized. She looked stunned, not uncomfortable, moved. She came up afterward, eyes glassy. "That story about the boy who was going to jump, that's Jeremy, our son. He never told us he was using your program." I stood frozen, my heart pounded. "I had no idea," I said. She hugged me, whispered, "Thank you for not giving up, even when we didn't see you." That night, I cried in the car, not from pain, from the grace of being witnessed finally for what I'd built. 2 days after the conference, my uncle called me. Not a text, a call. I stared at the screen like it was ringing from a parallel universe. "Hi, Maya," he said, voice stiff but steady. "Elaine told me everything, about what you've been doing, about Jeremy." Silence. Then, "I owe you an apology. I thought you were lost. I didn't realize you were leading." I didn't know what to say. So I said nothing. He went on. "We've donated to youth foundations before, but this is different. It's personal. Let me know how we can support your work." Support? From the man who once said I was a waste of potential. At the next family dinner, he offered me the first plate. Everyone noticed. I didn't need the gesture, but I accepted it. Because sometimes the hardest healing isn't what you build. It's what you let back in without bitterness. By spring, Bridgelight was in 18 schools. We'd trained over 300 peer listeners. I hired 2 part-time staff members, both young adults who'd survived their own storms. One afternoon, I was invited back to Roosevelt High for a student assembly. When I walked on stage, I saw Jeremy, my cousin, sitting in the front row. He gave me a small, knowing nod. After the event, he came up quietly. "I didn't tell anyone it was me in your story," he said. "But thank you. I didn't know how to ask for help. You made it okay." I put my hand on his shoulder. "You did the hard part. You stayed." Later that night, my aunt emailed me. "Jeremy wants to volunteer this summer. He said, I want to be someone's bridge." I sat in my apartment, rereading that line. Be someone's bridge. It hit me then. I hadn't just built a program, I'd built a shift in how we talk, in what we pass down. Not pressure, but permission. Not perfection, but presence. The next time someone at a family gathering asked, "So what do you do now?" I didn't shrink. I said, "I run a nonprofit that helps prevent teen suicide. We're in 20 schools now." My uncle didn't interrupt. He didn't scoff. He added, "And it saved my son's life." The room went silent. Not awkward. Honored. Later that night, my dad pulled me aside. "You know," he said, "I used to brag about how smart you were because you got into med school. But now I brag about what you made with that pain." He wasn't a man of many words, but those hit harder than any degree ever could. I still don't have letters after my name. I still drive a dented Civic and eat leftovers most nights. But I go to sleep knowing I didn't abandon my path. I forged one that didn't exist yet. One someone else will now walk more safely because I did.